Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers is a Disney Plus original movie inspired by the Disney afternoon cartoon of the same name. Before I talk about this movie, I think it would be best if I gave you my knowledge on the cartoon. Absolutely nothing. Yeah, I was born 7 years after it ended, and I never bothered to watch any of the episodes despite the show being available on Disney Plus. I know it has Chip and Dale in it, and that's the end of that. In fact, I don't know much about Disney Afternoon as a whole. I haven't watched the original DuckTales, but I've seen the reboot, which is really good. I may not have grown up with these shows that many would consider classics, but Disney still comes out with great cartoons to this day. Just look at Amphibia. It's my personal favorite animated series of all time. It just had its finale, and it was amazing. From what I can tell, Rescue Rangers does seem like the kind of property that has movie potential, so I understand why it was made. What I was not prepared for was it being a meta-commentary with Andy Samberg and John Mulaney as the voices of Chip and Dale, and directed by the guy who made the Popstar movie. The trailers looked kinda dumb, but they still got me interested in watching it just to see how much of a mess it might be. I went to the D23 Gold member screening, meaning I went from San Diego all the way to Burbank just to watch it a few days early. Was it worth it? Personally, I say it was. Watching it with an audience made it slightly more enjoyable, especially since the movie itself is not very good. In a world where animated characters and live-action humans coexist, Chip and Dale grow up to become TV celebrities together, but they go their separate ways after their show ends, but then they get back together to solve the mystery of the disappearance of Monterey Jack. The plot I don't entirely have a problem with. It's an interesting idea, making fun of studios that try to take classics people loved and exploit them in the modern era. It's a fine concept in theory, until you realize this is from one of those studios guilty of doing this. It makes fun of certain tropes, but it ends up doing those tropes itself. Like, they mention how having animated characters rap is stupid, then they do it themselves later on. Just because you acknowledge that it's stupid doesn't make it any better when you do it yourself. They even do a cliche fake-out death towards the end. Dale mentions that he made himself CGI, which I guess can be funny if Chip wasn't also CGI, regardless if it's stylized. That leads me to another thing. Some of the animation is terrible. There are characters who are intended to look bad, but then there are ones who just look bad because. I'm sorry, but this attempt at cel shading CGI to replicate choppy animation doesn't look right to me. I don't know what Disney has against traditional 2D animation. Space Jam 2 did it. Regardless of what you think of that movie, the animation was still really good. Even here, there are some 2D animated characters in the background that look so much better. I guess they couldn't put that much effort into the ones with the most focus. I gotta give credit where it's due though. Unlike a lot of other live-action CGI hybrids, they actually put a lot of focus on the animated characters. There is this one detective chick who has quite a lot of screen time, but the main focus is definitely on Chip and Dale. This movie knows who the main characters are, and I respect that. One thing that really takes me out of it though is the voice acting, specifically for Chip and Dale. It's not entirely because of there being a celebrity voice cast, even though that's something I've grown tired of. They do come up with a way for it to make sense as to why Chip and Dale sound the way they do. However, when they talk, all I can think about is Andy Samberg and John Mulaney recording their lines. They never felt like actual characters, just two comedians fooling around in a recording booth. Eric Bana voices Monterey Jack, and he did a surprisingly great job, but I'm wondering why they didn't just get Jim Cummings to voice the character again, especially since he voices some other characters in the film. I mean, they got Tress MacNeille back as Gadget. Why was that the only exception? For the most part, the voice acting is passable, such as J.K. Simmons as the claymation detective. What I really want to talk about though is the villain of the film, Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Peter Pan, Pepper Ann, Peter Potts, Peter Parker Pan, Peter Quill Pan's Labyrinth, Pantaloons, Peter Pink Panther, Peter Pumpkin Eater Pan, Peter Griffin Pandora, Jewelry Peter Piper Pan Pizza, picked a peck of pickled Peruvian puff peppers. What they do with him is awful! I absolutely hate what they did with him. Like, what were they thinking? His backstory is that Disney cut ties with him because he was getting older. That's how he became the kind of person he is today. In case you don't know, this is similar to what happened with Peter's original voice actor, which eventually led to him overdosing on drugs, which led to his death. This cannot be a coincidence. If it's not, it is in very poor taste. Did no one working on this think to themselves that this might not have been a good idea? Regardless of this, the character is just really annoying and I got sick of him really fast. Will Arnett does his best, but it's just another case of someone becoming a washed up celebrity who tries to gain a purpose. This isn't the first time Will Arnett has played a washed up celebrity. The ending feels like it goes on for a long time. When I think it's about to wrap up, it just keeps going. The worst part about the movie, however, is it's not very funny. Aside from a few jokes that landed here and there, the movie resorted to such a lazy form of comedy. Most of the jokes aren't even really jokes, they're just references and cameos. This movie relies on a lot of them. This is what I was worried Multiverse of Madness would be, and I was relieved when it didn't go that route. In this movie, a lot of the cameos don't serve any purpose, they're just there so people can point them out. I didn't even recognize half of them. When they don't even make an attempt to be funny, it just causes some people to be bored, wondering who these people are. A lot of them are ones that kids wouldn't even get. The cameos I did recognize, I honestly thought were cute to see. There's a Seth Rogen joke that I thought was so freaking hilarious. I was blown away by the fact that they included that. There's also an appearance from a certain character that caused the entire internet to be outraged a few years back. But for the most part, the humor just doesn't work. Like, this detective lady is explaining some crime about Nick Jr. involving Peppa Pig and Paw Patrol. Peter Pan. That's not a joke. It's a bunch of sentences. There's a lot of moments like that. References do not equal comedy. There needs to be some punchline and cleverness to it. Also, sorry for this nitpick, it's more of a personal preference than actual criticism, but in one scene, Squidward is shown to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, don't you think it would have been funnier if it were Patrick? You know, Patrick Star? Again, that's just a personal thing. Doesn't hurt the movie. I just felt like bringing it up. It really feels like this movie is trying to be like Roger Rabbit, but Roger Rabbit knew how to be clever with its concept. But I would be lying if I said I didn't have some fun. When I watched this at a screening, the audience was cracking up when a cameo would come up. That's the thing though, it's one of those movies that should be experienced with an audience, just like Rocky Horror Picture Show, but this movie isn't being released in theaters. It's a Disney Plus exclusive. I don't think that makes the movie as exciting. If I had watched this alone on my chair in my house, I probably would have been bored, because the story isn't good enough to carry the movie. Still, I'm surprised Disney of all companies managed to release something like this, and clearly there's something wrong with me because everyone seems to really like it. I was hoping to like it myself, but it didn't quite hit the mark for me in the way I wanted it to. There is some enjoyment to be found in Rescue Rangers, but as a whole, it falls flat in its execution. I'll say this, it made me want to watch the cartoon. I think I will eventually, but if you want to see this movie's concept done better, then I suggest watching Roger Rabbit. As for Rescue Rangers, this is, hold on a second. Oh, okay, that works. This is nearly a crime that almost slipped through the cracks.